It's about the restoration of our republic. We want to educate, encourage, enable the power. We stand for integrity, honesty, self-reliance, self-defense, and most importantly, no compromise on our foundational principles. This is America's Voice Now.
Find America's Voice Now on Facebook and at americasvoicenow.org. Here's Michael Evans.
Good morning, America. You're listening to America's Voice Now. My name is Michael Evans. I'll be your host this morning. We're going to cover a ton of topics today, and there's some late-breaking news out in reference to the latest issue relating to the NSA, and we're going to talk about that and a new DHS system called BOSS. And I tell you, we are entering a very, very dangerous time where we really need to understand the depth of where things are going with this. In our first segment this morning, however, we're going to talk about the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, and the TTIP. These are two different programs that are treaties being negotiated. They are international in their scope, and their intent is to essentially abdicate U.S. sovereignty to the European Union and merge the European Union along with the U.S. I got to tell you, folks, this is something that is being kept under the table by the press, by the Ministry of Propaganda, by the administration, and it is an extraordinarily exigent danger to our nation. And so I want to inform you about it, keep you up to speed on it, and raise your hackles about it, because this is a very, very dangerous thing that's being moved forward. So on our first segment, we're going to talk about TTP and TTIP. In our second segment, we're going to talk about NSA how they now are, there's new information out that they are not only capable but actively collecting 75% of the traffic, and the DHS's new BOSS system, which enables mass facial recognition in large crowds. I'll tell you, I mean, folks, if you don't believe that 1984 is alive and well in the United States of America, I don't know what planet you're living on. Our third segment is going to touch on Grok Law, or Grok Law. I'm not quite sure how you pronounce it. This is an organization which previously was a kind of a whistleblower on legal issues surrounding corporate policies and things like that. And as a result of the issues of this surveillance, and this is tied to the NSA, of course, they are now shutting down operations. Now, they've been a crusader for the rights of individuals and so forth for many, many years. And now they believe that they really need to shut their doors. And I find that a travesty in the sense that we're no longer going to have the benefit of that because they are terrified. Folks, when you are afraid of your own government to the point where you are willing to shut down a public advocacy website and all of its benefits and operations that are an improvement to our society, I mean, how much more proof do you need that all of this NSA surveillance is damaging our society and the very fabric upon which our nation was built? Free speech, free thought, the opportunity for us to coordinate our efforts, and to the free assembly of Americans. Listen, this is damaging everything, and everybody better get up on their high horse and realize, stand on your hind legs and fight back against this, because we are about to lose our republic. The fourth topic we're going to talk about in our fourth segment is going to be this Wi-Fi mesh network, which is one way in which we as individuals can fight back. And so let's get started. There's a ton of stuff to go over this morning. You know, I expanded the show to 2 hours because there wasn't enough in 1 hour to cover it all. And frankly, there's not enough in 2 hours to cover it all. I mean, realistically, this administration drops so much ammunition around that we can fire that if we had a cyclic rate on a gun that went 6,000 rounds a second, we wouldn't be able to fire it all. The amount of information that is out there for those who are willing to look at it is astronomical. If you're not paying attention, if you are not following what's going on, that's on you. But the information is plentiful. It's there. All you have to do is read it. I get it. You have to read between the lines. You have to be intellectual about your about your critical thinking skills and making sure that you are actively monitoring the indoctrination that you're being given by the mainstream media. But what you also must realize is that there are tons and tons of alternative media sources out there that are telling the truth every single day, and you're just not aware of them. Make yourself aware of them. Educate yourself about what's going on and what's happening in the real world, not the Ministry of Propaganda's biased version, which is intended to indoctrinate you into the thinking that that this administration and all the globalists and elitists and oligarchists want you to believe. Recognize that your mind is the only weapon you have against these people. And if they are subverting that, then you are lost to us. You are lost to yourself, and you are lost to your nation. All right, let's talk about this TPP and TTIP. If you're not familiar with what these are, I'm going to break the news for you, but I got to tell you that the TPP, so let's understand what they stand for first. The TPP is the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Now, this is a treaty that's being negotiated by the Obama administration, and they've promised an end of negotiations by the end of the year, or a conclusion of negotiations by the end of the year, which will then incite a Senate vote to whether or not we want to agree to this. And it's a NAFTA-type trade partnership that, however, has some onerous elements to it that exceed whatever CAFTA and NAFTA brought to us, which we already know caused a massive exodus of U.S. jobs and basically the elimination of our sovereignty in many, many areas. And furthermore, it turned us from a manufacturing powerhouse and a manufacturing nation into, for all intents and purposes, a paper-pushing service nation. Nothing that Americans do anymore is related to manufacturing. And that strength, which has been stolen from us, will be the end of us in the event that we ever have to stand on our own two feet and not be interdependent, which is their key operative word, related to international relations and manufacturing and just plain Jane survival, folks. You see, a nation that doesn't manufacture anything cannot stand on its own 2 feet. It is, by its very nature, interdependent on other nations in order to survive. And here's the problem with that. Once we are interdependent on them, we no longer have the wherewithal and the ability to manufacture our own products and goods and services that we need right here in our own domestic country. And we're talking about things that are critical to the basic functioning of society. We're talking about electronic generation systems for power plants and the grid. We're talking, here's a perfect example. If we ever had a solar flare that caused an EMP in the United States of America, the estimates now are that it would take us 3 years to get back on the grid. Why? And by the way, that's assuming everything goes 100% in our direction, because we don't manufacture any of the generation systems that are part and parcel of the grid. We'd have to get those from third companies overseas. And first of all, we have to assume that, one, no other country's been hit and they don't have priority. Two, that they're actually going to build what we want. Three, that they're not going to hold us up for money and or, sovereignty compromises. And then third, or fourth, I should say, the worst part of it is it's got to get from there to here. Do you know how hard it is to move? You're talking about massive shipping. These are things that cannot be built here anymore because we don't have the manufacturing capacity for them. And so that's just one example. There are literally tens of thousands of examples. But we no longer make anything here. We don't make the weapons of war here anymore either. We don't make the tools of our society, the electronics information that we need, and the tools and the products that we survive with. We don't make the electronic boards. So if you've got a shortage of that kind of thing, guess what? Our entire society runs on electronics and electricity. Without those two items, we are back in the Stone Ages for all intents and purposes, people. So the TPP is the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Now, Obama has sworn that he's going to have negotiations completed by year's end, which will then induce it to be tossed in front of Congress the Senate for a ratification. The second one is the TTIP, and this is the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership. And this is one where we're talking about merging the United States with the European Union. I mean, for real, guys, you don't even know this is happening. If this is the first time you've ever heard the TTIP and TTP, or TPP, you're asleep at the switch. And the reason why America is falling down the rabbit hole is because our generation is allowing it to. So it's time for you to stop sitting around eating potato chips on the couch, get your butt up off the chair, and start taking some action in defense of this republic. Because we're about to lose it. We're going to go down in history, not as the greatest generation like our fathers and our grandfathers. We're going to go down in history as the stupidest generation because we allowed our entire nation to slip away from us. How shameful and reprehensible is that? Is that what you want to go down in history known as? The complacent, apathetic, completely drugged out and indoctrinated generation that allowed freedom to be stolen from their very throats and pockets while we were awake? My goodness. I'll tell you what, this thing is so dangerous to us and our sovereignty as an international entity, as a national entity, as a independent, standalone nation, that you have no concept of this until you fully understand the depth of depravity of this. Go look these up. That's called TPP, Trans-Pacific Partnership, and the TTIP. That's the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership. Do your own homework, do your own research, come to your own conclusions. Make sure that you're reading both sides of the fence. Ideologically, we never want to drink our own Kool-Aid, right? And the reason for that is because we don't want to be as ideologically strapped as our opposition, who believes like sycophants everything that they're told. Sorry. Your goal is to be educated and informed, and then formulate your own opinions instead of parroting other people's. So get yourself educated about what's going on here, because I'm telling you, this stuff is an even a more exigent threat to us than what's happening domestically. I mean, if you think immigration is a problem now, wait until the TPP and TTIP are finished. I'm telling you, these are borderless, globalized nations, where the term nation no longer means borders, no longer means sovereignty. Do you understand the importance of that? I mean, we are in some dangerous, dangerous water here. We're not surrounded by waves. We're surrounded by huge waves. We're surrounded by deadly octopus. We're surrounded by deadly man-o-war. And we're surrounded by deadly sharks, great whites. I mean, there's almost no escape at this point, people. So recognize the depth of where we are. China, for the most part, has been out of these negotiations. But lately they're jumping in because they recognize the inevitability of this. And here's what you need to understand. This crap, and especially the TTIP, has been under the radar and held under the radar by the Ministry of Propaganda and the mainstream media for a decade now. But it's really heated up in the last 5 years, which is when these negotiations have been operating. These are being negotiated in Washington, D.C., so don't tell me that we're just an ancillary player in this. We're not. We are the main instigator of it, and this administration is right in the thick of it. This is flat-out treason, people. They are negotiating away our sovereignty as an independent nation. Most Americans have never even heard of it. I've posted up articles on our Facebook page and on our website and on a number of other websites, and this post will be up on YouTube. Share this with anyone and everyone that you can get a hold of. I mean, share this with your entire church congregation through your email newsletter, and let them know what's happening. If your church says, well, we're a 501c3 and we can't talk about politics in our church because there's a separation of church and state, then find yourself another damn church. This is where we need to be fighting, people, right here on the front line. And we need to be educating everyone around us so that America is fully aware of how deep and dangerous our situation is. We have fallen down the rabbit hole. When you look up, the pinprick of light is so small it is barely visible. We have almost been engulfed by the darkness. And I'm telling you, this is close. This is a plan for the economic and political merger of the United States and the European Union. Do you understand the importance of that? over the course of the next year, as this negotiation process gets wrapped up and they start to shovel this in front of Congress, the NSA, with all of their surveillance, is going to put every ounce of pressure against the Senate to ratify this treaty. And remember something. The vast majority of people in the Senate don't represent you. They represent the government. That is treason in and of itself. But couple that with the fact that they have the ability to ratify and install in the United States as an approved treaty, which then comes with subsequent, literally millions of pages of regulations on how to implement that treaty, which have been unwritten and are going to then be written by unelected bureaucrats who have ideological concepts that are so far flung away from what we know to be the realities of things that you are going to be stunned by what comes out of this thing. I mean, the stuff that we heard about NAFTA and CAFTA is only the tip of the iceberg. You know, we know that NAFTA and CAFTA now, with the experience that we've had over the past decade, has been a travesty for the United States of America. It's been a terrible, terrible exodus and a flood of our skills and our money leaving the nation. Leaving the nation and being installed in third world countries so that we can drag them up out of the roots of poverty. However, by doing so, we're also diminishing our own capability and our own wherewithal as a nation to be able to be self-sufficient. Right? Our own self-reliance requires that we stop this. The Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership, you know, is I'll tell you what, I'm going to read you a couple of sections out of this because it's really important that you understand the nature of how deep this goes. There's a guy named Van Rompuy who met at the G8 summit in June, and he met with Obama and Prime Minister Cameron and so forth and so on. And they're putting the pitch on for this crap. So here's a quote from this guy, and it tells us all we need to know about how deep down the rabbit hole we're going in reference to this partnership. Quote, "The positive ramifications will even go beyond the economy as such." Listen to this now and read between the lines. I want you to wear your critical thinking hat and start to understand what they mean. It will go beyond economies. We are making our economies all over the world more, what? Interdependent. When you hear the word interdependent and interdependence, think of dependence. We will be dependent on other nations for our own survival. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is exactly the way they want it. They don't want the United States to be able to stand alone as a superpower, economic superpower, military superpower, intellectual superpower, or any other kind. They don't want you and I to have the independence to say, we as a nation stand sovereign. We are a standalone entity. We reject all of these ties with international socialistic governments. And we will stand on the rule of law. They call this the project. The project. This was sold originally as a six-member union, 6 original member nations, which were getting together as a coal and a steel collective. However, they've deepened this thing to incorporate the actual political implications of merging the United States and the European Union. Now, look, the European Union is a horrific mess. If you want to tie yourself to the European Union, I can't imagine why you would want to do that. Look at them. They are in such utter disarray, politically, socially, economically, morally, ethically. It is a disaster. Why would we tie ourselves to that? I mean, you may as well say you want to join the Manson clan. The hell are you thinking? Here's what he says. They want to widen and deepen the process because it involves the integration and harmonization of the U.S. and the European Union. Think of those words and understand what they mean. He gave us another hint. The TPP is, quote, a powerful demonstration of our determination to shape an open-end, rules-based world. Listen to that. It's a powerful demonstration of our determination to shape an open and rule-based world. Ruled by whom? Who are the ruled? In other words, we're signing ourselves up to be the ruled by masters we don't even know. And we know for one thing, we definitely know one thing for sure. They don't have your best interest at heart. They don't have the best interest at heart of the American people, the 50 states in the Union, soon to be 51 when North Colorado breaks away. I mean, guys, don't you understand the depth of the exigent threat we are under as a nation? I mean, this is stunning stuff. Václav Klaus, he's a Czech economist and a president of the Czech Republic. And here's what he has to say about this thing. He has been blasting this thing from Jump Street. Here's what he says. Now, this is a guy who's who's involved in this, right? And he is fully, I mean, he's so close to the European Union, it's like watching your neighbor. Not from across town, but from right next door, right? So, the guy across town says, well, that guy's not so bad. But his next door neighbor says, of course he is. I hear him beating his wife and kids every night. Listen. Instead of dismantling socialism, we have gotten more sophisticated, more hidden, and more intensive methods of government intervention and regulation. The ever-increasing size and scope of the welfare state, multiculturalism, and political correctness. This is not a great victory. I'm going to say that to you again because I want you to hear it. This is Václav Klaus, the Czech economist and the president of the Czech Republic from 2003 to 2013. Instead of dismantling socialism, we have gotten more sophisticated, more hidden, and more intensive methods of government intervention and regulation. The ever-increasing size and scope of the welfare state, multiculturalism, and political correctness. This is not a great victory. Mikhail Gorbachev agrees with this guy. Gorbachev approves of the integration and the socializing of Europe, right? But in a speech in London in 2000, Gorbachev referred to the evolving EU as the new European Soviet. In other words, he's referencing that the European Union is becoming the new USSR, United Soviet Socialist Republics. And we're about to join. I mean, you got to be flipping kidding me. We're out of time on this segment. Man, I can't even believe it's over. Ugh, I'm so frustrated. I wish I had days to go over this stuff and work with you guys because this is so critical and so dangerous. We have no idea how deeply in distress we are. I got to tell you, it's like we're having a heart attack, but we've been put to sleep so we don't feel the pain. Next segment, we're going to cover the NSA, how they can now monitor and capture 75% of all U.S. traffic, and the DHS's new BOSS system. That's an optical facial recognition system they're developing and building for large crowd surveillance and monitoring. We'll be right back.